Hello, welcome to Climo Custom Guitars. What are we doing today? Today, we're doing an epoxy pour because we are going to make ourselves one of these. So, how are we going to make a Yeti? Well, I'll tell you how to make a Yeti. You start with a piece of beautiful figured live edge ash. So this is from the same board that I bought from, what are they called? Waney Edge City Lumber or something. It's out near like Churchford, it's miles away. Long journey. So we start with a piece like this, lovely bit of live edge. We've already tapered the cut to incorporate some of the bark on the live edge. So that will basically get drowned in an epoxy bit of pour. Look at the spalting on this thing. I mean, it's just magnificent. That is just, it's so, and it goes the whole way through as well, which I'm quite happy about. You can even see it on the end grain. It's just fantastic. And the figuring on this thing, just gorgeous. So looking forward to doing this one. Basically, because as I was building the Yeti bass, the whole time I was just thinking, I want this to be my guitar. But it's not. That's a present for my best mate Dan Hughes, whom I gave that to him last night, albeit digitally because lockdown, we're obviously not going to meet up. And I was getting impatient because I finished it in about November and I haven't seen him yet. So yeah, now that that's out of the way, I'm now free to build and share my own version of the same model in a 6-string body. So yeah, let's go into some epoxy pour. I'm going to show you a few tips there because this whole business of building forms out of like pine from B&Q and then covering it in tape, that is so expensive, right? Every time you do that, you then destroy the form afterwards just to get one pour out. And usually with my guitars, there's usually multiple pours to them because they're, yeah, well, you can kind of see with the Yeti, right? There was at least 3 pours that went on here, and if I had to build a form, the first one in there in red, then the second clear one over the top, and then you had to do touch-up bits through the cracks. If I had to build a form every single time, that's going to cost me 50, 60 quid for building 3 forms, I suppose, because you buy the book. You got to buy OSB boards or MDF or something like that to go with it. You got to be cutting that. Building my first form took me like an hour because you have to be precise. It's got to be watertight. Just a nightmare. Watch this. Pussy epoxy on me. Oh, I sound like Animal. No, I sound like Bobcat Goldthwait. Right, this is where we're going to do our epoxy pours. This is the 5th time I will have used this, and it's endless, right? This is a polyethylene crate. I picked this one up from Homebase. If you're in the States, it's probably just your usual Walmart, Costco, whatever those massive stores are over there. Interestingly, from my readings on this and why polyethylene works, you have to make sure you don't get polypropylene or whatever it's called. It specifically has to be polyethylene, right? Pretty much nothing else. That kind of box, epoxy just doesn't stick to it, right? Some bits down here that look like they're stuck, and the slightest sort of push, off it comes, right? That was cast on. Same with that, in that corner, it just slides off, right? Not only that, because it's slightly flexible, it makes getting it out of, when you're done, the form, really easy, right? Because I'm using a paint scraper, but you just even a push on the box, it pulls away from the cured epoxy. The other thing that epoxy won't stick to, this is casting resins, by the way, I won't speak for all epoxies, some of them may be different, is electrical tape, right? Or commonly sometimes referred to as PVC insulation tape. Flame retardant, right, which is important for when we're popping our bubbles during the pour, if they pop up. But it won't stick to that either. So here's a piece this was on the bottom of something I'm doing at the moment. And you can see that you use a combination of tape and silicone. Just standard silicone. Don't get anything that's like builder's silicone or anything like that, because that's an actual adhesive. You don't want an adhesive, you purely just want a sealant. So it's going to be a silicone sealant. by combining those two, right, by the time it's done, that's epoxy, that sort of darkish blue colour, right, just comes off. That's how I've done all my forms, all my pours. It works brilliantly. And as I said, it also means that you can just use it over and over and over again. One thing to be careful of, and I can't quite catch it from this angle, it's on this near side here, is however, if you were to put a scratch in it, right, that scratch becomes a place for the epoxy to pour in, fill out, and well, it can contract. Some of them will expand. It really depends on the conditions and the type of epoxy you're using. But if it gets into that crack, that's why I put it up here, hopefully no epoxy pours into this height, then what ends up happening is it does end up sort of in a way destroying it. I got lucky because when it cured, when I popped it out of the form, it only took away like a small section, about an inch long, is what came out of the polyethylene box. So I've just whacked some duct tape over that, and then if my pour happens to go near that duct tape, I just put a couple of thick layers of electrical tape over it, and that takes care of that. So yeah, I'm going to tidy this box up, give it a vacuum, clean up all the old epoxy so it's nice and flat. Then I'm going to put a piece of wood or something underneath because I'm on carpet, so I don't want the whole thing to bounce around, right, because that'll make an uneven flat surface. Then we will quickly just prepare this surface. I'm just going to give it a light scrubbing to get rid of any of the dead loose bark, and there's some moss on it as well, which would be kind of cool, but because the pour is going to be red, it's a bit pointless to keep fungals in there. And then we're going to pop over to the bathroom because I do this all inside my house. It's winter. And then we're going to pour it, and then I'll check back in a few days and it should be glorious. All right, so as you can see, we've got the measurements we've taken here. It's usually better to have too much and waste a little bit than to not have enough. Not really an issue in terms of you can always go get back and get more. Mixing more doesn't take very long. The issue is you will have a contaminated vessel, and unless you want to go through lots of vessels, it's just easier to just have a little bit left over and, you know, Do with it what you like. Don't pour it down the drain, that's naughty. Right, so we've sort of averaged it out to be, it's going to be roughly 4.6 in depth across. In terms of height, it's going to be 40 mil, so 4 centimeters. Wonderful thing about the metric system, everything just converts straight over. So we know that it's going to be about 40 centimeters long by, on average, 4.6 wide. Yeah, which I've rounded up to 5 anyway, so I'm going to have, again, enough. So by the time you get to that, you get to a figure of about 800 centimeters cubed in volume, which will translate to 800 milliliters. With the epoxy I've got, which is a 2-to-1 epoxy to hardener ratio, that just comes out at a nice even 266 mil of hardener and 533 of epoxy. Now, if you've been a little bit worried watching about, well, hang on a second, he's doing a live edge epoxy pour. Normally when people do tables, they've usually taken off the bark. The bark is brittle. Yes, it is. However, we can sort of work with that. What I do fairly successfully, I'm trying to keep the bark edge on, is if you find little bug holes and little deep bits within the bark that aren't really all that visible, get a nice small, not too small, nice small drill bit, and we go to work on it. By the time blood red epoxy is poured on that, you are not going to see that. And what it does is it creates basically like an anchor point. And if you direct the angles in, then it's basically pinching onto the wood anyway. So that combined with it'll be touching the surface anyway, and it fills all the gaps down to the sapwood, it'll be fine, but I just do it for, the last thing you want to do is drop the thing and have the entire epoxy horn just snap off. So yeah, we'll do that, and I'm going to go mix up the epoxy. I'll take a quick break to go have some lunch because I'm starving, it's the end of my lunch break. But then I will also prepare the test pieces I'm doing for the great guitar build-off bit. I need to do a test on that underpour. Dun dun dun. Right, bit of an issue last night. I caught it in time though. At the top up here, down at the bottom of the guitar in the corner, there clearly wasn't enough, or there was a gap in the silicone. As a result, it started to leak out into here, and because it then managed to get around the flood barrier I've got going underneath, pretty much parallel to where the sapwood starts. Yeah, it went over that and then started to flow under the guitar all the way down to the bottom to my other flood barrier. So there was a lot of very messy stuffing silicone in a hurry and filling with paper towels to try and catch the leak. It was very slow, but it was happening. So I've lost about 40 mil in total, which has created the best part of an 8 mil sort of drop from the top. That's okay because this is going to be planed and tapered off into a rounded edge, profiled edge anyway. So I've caught it in time, no big dramas. So that's just something to be aware of, is that if you are doing this solution of trying to isolate pores, that yeah, you will save epoxy, but on occasion if you get it wrong, you might lose some. I'm net positive in terms of saving epoxy, right? I'm not having to build an entire form, flood the entire thing, and then end up cutting out all around the body, right? It's because I'm only doing one side. So yeah, not too fussed. This will turn out fine. So this is a slow curing epoxy. So we're gonna leave it for the best part of probably another 5 days. I can demold it in about 3, maybe 4, so that's about Tuesday. I think I'll pop it out, and then I can probably start working it from Thursday, Friday. So in the meantime, I'm going to crack on to some of the other guitars that are in need of some love and work, and we'll pick this one back up soon.